I am so overwhelmed and inspired by the voices that we've heard, the stories that we've heard on stage today, and by how much change such a small number of dedicated individuals can have in the world. We heard about how people take their stories and apply them to their everyday lives, apply them to your everyday life. Now, I've heard from some of you today at the breaks, and some of you are wondering, I don't want to start a movement. How do I contribute? This seems a little big. These people are making huge change. And with that, I want to give you a little bit of parting advice from a person who has a story, from a person who had a dream, and a person who has found my calling in life. And I'm a young person who found her calling. Start where you are. Start with what you know. Now, last year, I was fortunate enough to tell my story for the first time. I had never told anybody about the first time I was diagnosed with cancer. Anybody. There were people in that room last year who I had known for years and had no idea that I had cancer. Step one, tell your story, whatever it is. We are all in this room, and now we know something more than we did. We are responsible. Knowledge is power, and you are all required to share it where you are. So, how do we start where we are? First, I'm going to talk about identity. I'm going to ask you to do a little check-in, a little exercise before you go out into the world and share what knowledge you know. My friend Jethro Heiko, who runs an organization called Common Practice, taught me really wonderful piece of advice. Now, we were setting up a public gameplay event to try and have advanced care planning conversations with the public. It succeeded, I tell you. The first thing that he said, the instructions that he gave when people walked in the door, was to check your license at the door. You are here, sitting here as human beings. We are all human. We all are the same on that level. We get overwhelmed with labels. I am A, right? Fill in the blank. I've got a lot of labels. Last year, I was a 2-time cancer survivor. Most of the time, I am the senior manager of advanced illness and palliative care at Blue Shield of California, and that is my narrow place that I know a lot about. I know a lot about the thing that I do. Now, I'm going to ask you to think for a moment about what your labels are. Fill in the blank. I am A. What comes to mind? I am a physician. I am a mother. I am a child. I am a caregiver. For me, today, I'm a granddaughter. And I want to tell you why I'm starting there. 20 years ago, I experienced 5 traumatic deaths of people my age. I experienced suicide and motor vehicle accidents. I experienced shootings. I came from a community that was rocked with tragic endings, and I was grieving and I was lost. And I tried to figure out how to make my way in the world. Fast forward to 5 years later, when I was able to experience something that I would say is the gold standard of death. My grandmother. Now, my grandmother, Neva Pauline Fields, was 93 years old, independent, stubborn, German woman. I look in the mirror and I still see her in me, and that's a little scary, but also my favorite thing about myself. My grandmother orchestrated her own death. She lived on her own until she was 93, and she fell in the shower one day, and her life changed. She ended up going to the hospital, immediately wanted to get out of it, moved in with my aunt, and she sat our family down, and she said, "Look, I'm going to die, and here's how it's going to go. I'm not going to the hospital ever again. Okay. I'm going to move in with Helen, who's my aunt, and you're all going to take care of me." Okay. Okay, Grandma. It sounds fine. So the reason I bring this up is my grandmother then, over a period of 8 months, with the help of a wonderful home hospice team, scheduled everybody in the family, her 11 children and her 93 grandchildren, and she gave all of her belongings away one by one. And because I'm the youngest grandchild, I went last. And what I learned from this experience was that you can do it right. The day after my grandmother gave my special willed gifts to me, she died. She was done. And what I learned from that experience, sitting in the room with my grandmother and with all of my other family members, as this woman took her last breaths, her last word being my grandfather's name, who had died in 1974, was something that Dr. Ira Byock shared in my favorite book. My grandmother intrinsically shared the 4 things that matter most. She asked for forgiveness. She gave forgiveness. She said thank you. And she told all of us how much she loved us. And she left. And that was a beautiful death. And for me, I knew what the difference was, and I had a part to play in making better memories for people. I am in the business of making memories, and so can you be. You can start where you are. Start at home. Start with talking to your parents. Start with talking to your caregiver, to your friends. I have played that game that I was talking about, Hello, wonderful game, on first dates. I ask every first date if they have an advance directive. And if they don't, we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But you know, that translates into community. We as humans, we start with ourselves. Look at your biases. Look at how you interact with the world. And then remember, when you go to work, when you spend time with your family, when you go into your community or into your church, remember, what you know about yourself and others. Listen more, and then share. Tell your story. A collected number of stories starts a movement. And you know what movements do? They change policy. I get the opportunity to listen to stories all day long and then do something about it. I hear that somebody can't access services, and I am in a unique position to help them access it. But you are all in a unique position. Think about what you will commit to. How will you contribute to this movement? How will you contribute to designing a better end-of-life experience? Now, with that, go out and share your story.